The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Nora Bennett pushed through the double doors of St. Mary's Hospital, balancing a stack of worn paperbacks against her chest. Tuesday evenings had become sacred to her, not for personal reasons, but because they belonged to others. She volunteered in the pediatric ward, reading stories to children whose nights stretched longer than they should. A routine that felt like home. At 23, Nora had mastered the art of living small. Her studio apartment in the cheaper part of town barely fit a bed and desk, but it was hers. She worked freelance graphic design jobs during the day, attended community college classes 3 nights a week, and spent whatever remained of her energy here, in these sterile hallways that somehow felt more like home than anywhere else. She had learned early that life didn't hand out fairness like candy. Her parents had died in a ferry accident when she was 16, leaving her with a younger brother to raise and mountains of debt to climb. By 18, she had aged a decade. By 20, she had learned that survival meant sacrifice. By 23, she had almost forgotten what it felt like to want something just for herself. The stranger in the shadows, the hospital cafeteria sat mostly empty at 9 in the evening. Nora grabbed weak coffee and a sandwich that had seen better hours, settling into her usual corner booth. She opened her sketchbook, pencil moving across paper in familiar patterns. Drawing calmed the constant noise in her head, the endless list of bills and deadlines and responsibilities. She didn't notice him at first. The man sat 3 tables away, head down, shoulders hunched like he was trying to disappear. He wore an expensive watch that caught the light, but his clothes were rumpled, and exhaustion clung to him like a second skin. When darkness brings clarity, the lights went out without warning. Emergency generators kicked in seconds later, but the main cafeteria remained dark except for exit signs casting everything in red shadows. Nora heard chairs scraping, nervous laughter, someone cursing about hospital infrastructure. Then his voice cut through the darkness, low and careful. "Don't panic. They'll fix it," she found herself responding before thinking. "I'm not panicking. I'm just annoyed I can't see my coffee." A pause, then something that might have been a laugh. "Fair concern. Hospital coffee is tragic enough in the light." Conversations born in shadows, they talked for 20 minutes while maintenance worked on the problem. She couldn't see his face clearly, just the outline of broad shoulders and the glint of eyes adjusting to the darkness. He asked what brought her to the hospital so late. She explained about the children, the reading, how their faces lit up during the good parts of stories. "You do this for free?" he asked, and she heard genuine surprise. "Money isn't everything," she said simply. "Sometimes people just need to know someone cares." He went quiet for a long moment. "That's rare. What is?" "Meeting someone who actually believes that." The man behind the reputation, she learned he was visiting someone who worked for him, an assistant who had been in a car accident. He felt responsible, though he didn't explain why. His voice carried weight, the kind that came from bearing too much alone for too long. "You sound tired," Nora observed. "I am," he admitted. "Been tired for years." "Then maybe you should rest." "Can't afford to." She understood that language. "Can't or won't." The lights flickered back on. Nora blinked against the sudden brightness and finally saw him clearly. Dark hair, sharp features, expensive suit now wrinkled from hours of worry. But it was his eyes that caught her, gray and guarded, like they had forgotten how to trust. He stared back at her with equal intensity, taking in her paint-stained jeans, oversized sweater, and the tiredness she wore like armor. For a moment, neither spoke. "Recognition and escape Vincent Hayes," he said finally, extending his hand. Nora's breath caught. Everyone knew that name. Tech billionaire, venture capitalist, the man who had built an empire before 30. He funded hospitals and schools, appeared on magazine covers, and supposedly dated supermodels, though no relationship ever lasted. "You're actually him," she said stupidly. Something flickered across his face. "Disappointment, maybe. And now everything changes." "I should go," Nora said, gathering her things. "The kids are probably wondering where I am." "Wait." He stood as she did. "I didn't catch your name," she hesitated. "Nora Bennett." Nobody important? I doubt that's true, but she was already walking away, heart pounding for reasons she couldn't name. Behind her, Vincent Hayes remained standing in the fluorescent light, watching her disappear through the double doors like she had been something close to magic. The dare that changed everything. 3 days later, Nora's roommate burst into their apartment waving her phone like a victory flag. "You have to come to this gala with me." "I have class," Nora said without looking up from her laptop. "Skip it. My magazine got press passes to the Hayes Foundation charity event. Black tie, champagne, all the rich people you love to hate. That's exactly why I won't go." Her roommate, Jackie, had known her since freshman year and understood exactly which buttons to push. "I dare you. Remember freshman orientation when you said you'd never turn down a dare? That was stupid college talk. Still counts. Come on, Nora. When was the last time you did something just for fun?" Nora couldn't remember. That alone should have been answer enough. She closed her laptop. "Fine, but I'm not staying long," Jackie squealed, already planning outfits. Nora tried to ignore the flutter in her chest, the one that whispered she might see those gray eyes again. She told herself it was just curiosity, nothing more. But deep down, in the part of herself she tried hardest to ignore, she knew she was lying. Jackie's closet exploded across their small apartment like a designer bomb had detonated. Nora stood in the middle of the chaos, arms crossed, already regretting her decision. "This one," Jackie announced, holding up a midnight blue dress that looked more expensive than their monthly rent. "Where did you get that?" "Borrowed it from my cousin who works in fashion. Don't ask questions, just put it on." The dress fit perfectly, which somehow made everything worse. Nora stared at her reflection, barely recognizing the woman looking back. Her usual ponytail had been replaced with soft waves. Jackie had insisted on makeup, just enough to make her eyes look larger, more vulnerable. "You look like you belong there," Jackie said proudly. Nora shook her head. "I look like I'm pretending." Everyone pretends at these things. That's the whole point. Entering another world, the Hayes Foundation Gala took place at the Crystal Pavilion, a glass structure that seemed to float above the city. Nora felt every eye on her as they walked through security, past ice sculptures and champagne fountains that probably cost more than her college tuition. Jackie disappeared almost immediately, chasing some celebrity she recognized. Nora found herself alone in a sea of designer gowns and tailored suits, clutching a champagne flute she had no intention of drinking. She drifted toward the windows, where the city sprawled below in patterns of light and shadow. At least here, pressed against the glass, she could pretend to study the view instead of admitting she didn't belong. The east side looks different from up here. Nora froze. She knew that voice, had heard it in the darkness 3 nights ago. Slowly, she turned. Vincent Hayes stood 5 feet away, devastating in a black tuxedo that probably cost more than her car. But it was his expression that caught her, the way his eyes widened slightly, like he couldn't quite believe she was real. "Recognition. In a crowded room, I knew it was you before I saw your face," he said quietly. "Your voice. The way you stand like you're apologizing for taking up space. I wasn't sure you'd remember. I haven't stopped thinking about you." The honesty in his words stole her breath. Around them, the gala continued in swirls of music and laughter, but suddenly the room felt very small. "You came," he said. "My roommate dared me. Apparently, I have a weakness for dares." Something flickered across his face. Amusement, maybe, mixed with something darker. Dangerous habit? Before Nora could respond, a woman in red appeared at Vincent's elbow, all sharp edges and calculating eyes. "Vincent, darling, the photographer needs you for the donor wall." "Not now, Catherine. It's part of your commitment to the foundation." Her gaze slid to Nora, assessing and dismissing in one glance. "Besides, you shouldn't keep your guests waiting." Vincent's jaw tightened, but he nodded. To Nora, he said, "Don't leave, please." She watched him walk away, surrounded immediately by people wanting pieces of him. The woman in red lingered, studying Nora with unveiled curiosity. "You're new," she said. "Not a question. Just visiting. Word of advice. Vincent Hayes collects broken things. He thinks he can fix them, but he always gets bored and moves on." She smiled without warmth. "Don't get attached." When cameras flashed, Nora should have left then. Should have found Jackie, made excuses, disappeared back into her regular life. Instead, she waited. 30 minutes turned to an hour. She watched Vincent move through the crowd, shaking hands, making speeches, playing the role everyone expected. But every few minutes, his eyes found hers across the room. Each time, something passed between them. A question, maybe, or a promise. When he finally broke free, he didn't walk to her. He moved like a man with purpose, cutting through the crowd until he stood close enough that she could smell his cologne, cedar, and something darker. "Dance with me." "I don't know how to dance like this. Neither do I. I just fake it." He took her hand, led her to the floor where other couples swayed to music that sounded expensive. His hand found the small of her back, and suddenly Nora forgot how to breathe properly. "You're tense," he murmured against her ear. "There are cameras. Everywhere. Let them look." But the cameras did more than look. They captured. By the time the song ended, phones were out, whispers spreading like wildfire. Vincent Hayes, notorious bachelor, dancing with an unknown woman, holding her like she mattered. The proposal that changed everything. They escaped to a balcony, away from the noise and speculation. The night air felt cool against Nora's flushed skin. "I should apologize," Vincent said, "for putting you in that position. You didn't force me to dance." "No, but I knew what would happen." He turned to face her fully. "By tomorrow, your face will be everywhere. People will want to know who you are, where you came from, what you mean to me. And what do I mean to you?" He studied her for a long moment. "I don't know yet, but I want to find out." "That's not how this works. You're Vincent Hayes. I'm nobody. You keep saying that. Why?" "Because it's true. You have everything. I have student loans and a studio apartment with a leaky ceiling." Vincent stepped closer. "What if I offered you a deal?" "What kind of deal?" "The arrangement." He explained it carefully, like a business negotiation. The media attention would explode after tonight. His board members were pressuring him to settle down, present a more stable image. He had a product launch coming, investors to reassure. "I need someone real," he said. "Someone who won't perform for cameras or leak stories to tabloids. Someone who actually seems to care about things that matter. You want me to pretend to be your girlfriend for 3 months. Public appearances, some events, nothing private, nothing complicated. In return, I'll pay off your student loans and your brother's college tuition." Nora's head spun. "That's insane." "That's business. This isn't business. This is my life." Vincent's expression softened. "I know what I'm asking. Believe me, if there was another way, I wouldn't involve you. But something happened when I met you in that hospital. You talked to me like I was human, not a bank account. That's rare in my world. So rare you want to fake it. So rare I want to protect it, even if it's just for a little while." The decision that changed everything. Nora should have said no. Should have walked away from the expensive dress and the champagne and the man whose eyes held more loneliness than she had ever seen. But she thought about her brother, about the scholarship he had lost, about the collection notices piling up on her desk. 3 months, she said slowly. And then we go back to our separate lives. 3 months. And we establish rules, boundaries. This is professional. Agreed. She extended her hand. He took it, his grip warm and solid. Then we have a deal, Mr. Hayes. Vincent, he corrected. If we're going to convince people this is real, you should probably use my first name. That night, as Jackie drove them home, chattering excitedly about the gala and the dancing and the obvious chemistry, Nora stared out the window at the city lights. She had just agreed to pretend to love a man she barely knew, a man whose touch made her forget her own name, a man whose sadness matched her own in ways she was only beginning to understand. 3 months, she told herself. She could survive anything for 3 months. But as her phone buzzed with the first tabloid photo, her and Vincent caught mid-dance, his eyes on her like she was the only person in the room. She wondered if survival would be enough. The first week of their arrangement felt like living in a dream someone else was directing. Nora found herself at restaurant openings, art galleries, and business dinners where the wine cost more than her monthly grocery budget. Vincent played his part perfectly, attentive without being possessive, present without overwhelming her. But something unexpected happened between the camera flashes and carefully staged moments. They started talking. Really talking. During a charity dinner, while others networked around them, Vincent leaned close and whispered, "You're doing that thing again." "What thing?" Shrinking, like you're trying to take up less space. His hand found hers under the table. "You're allowed to exist, Nora." She squeezed his fingers, surprised by how natural it felt. "Old habits. Then we'll break them together." The cameras caught that moment, the way their eyes held, the soft smile on her face. The headlines the next day called them the most authentic couple in high society. If only they knew the truth. Cracks in the armor 3 weeks into their arrangement. Vincent invited her to his penthouse, not for show, just to talk. The space was beautiful and cold, like a magazine spread that no one actually lived in. "You don't have any photos," Nora observed, walking through rooms that felt more like hotels than homes. "Photos are evidence of things that don't last." She turned to find him watching her from the doorway, tie loosened, jacket discarded. This version of Vincent, rumpled and real, made her heart beat faster than any red carpet appearance. "Tell me about her," Nora said softly. He didn't pretend not to understand. "Her name was Lauren. We were engaged 5 years ago. She wanted me to slow down, spend more time with her instead of building empires. I said terrible things, told her she didn't understand ambition." His voice went flat. "She left angry. A drunk driver ran a red light. She died before the ambulance arrived." Nora crossed the space between them, taking his hand. "That wasn't your fault. I've spent 5 years believing it was." He looked at their joined hands, "until I met someone who reminded me that living in guilt isn't the same as living." "Vincent, I know this is fake," he said quickly. "I know we have rules and boundaries. But being with you, even pretending, feels more real than anything has in years." When walls come down, they started breaking their own rules after that. Vincent showed up at her apartment with takeout, sitting on her worn couch like he belonged there. She fell asleep during a movie, waking to find her head on his shoulder and his arm around her waist. One morning, he called her before sunrise. "Come somewhere with me." She met him at a harbor where a small sailboat waited. "You sail?" "I used to. Before I decided conquering boardrooms was more important." He helped her aboard. "You make me remember the person I was before I became what everyone needed." They spent the day on the water. No cameras, no pretense. Vincent taught her to read the wind. She taught him to stop checking his phone every 5 minutes. When the sun set, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, they sat side by side in comfortable silence. "This feels dangerous," Nora admitted. "What does?" "Forgetting this isn't real." Vincent turned to her, his expression unreadable in the fading light. "What if we stopped pretending it wasn't?" Her heart stuttered. "That's not part of the deal." "Then, maybe we should renegotiate." But before either could say more, his phone rang. "Business emergency." reality crashing back in. They sailed back in silence, the moment lost but not forgotten. The truth exposed. The scandal broke on a Tuesday morning. Nora woke to 17 missed calls and a tabloid headline that made her stomach drop. Billionaire's fake romance, the girl he paid to love him. Someone had leaked their contract. Every detail, every clause, every dollar amount. The internet exploded with opinions. Gold digger, con artist. Poor little rich boy who had to buy affection. Vincent called within minutes. Nora, I'm handling this. My lawyers are already working on finding who leaked it. It doesn't matter who leaked it. What matters is that it's true. I took your money. I pretended to care about you in front of cameras. You did care. I know you did. How can you know that? How can anyone know what's real anymore? The silence on the other end told her everything. He couldn't be sure. Neither could she. Walking away from almost Nora's apartment became a prison of buzzing phones and shouted questions from reporters camped outside. She stopped answering calls, stopped checking social media, stopped pretending she could survive the scrutiny. Jackie found her on the third day, still in pajamas, staring at nothing. He's been calling. I know. You should talk to him. What? Would I say? That I started to forget we were acting? That somewhere between the fake smiles and staged moments, I fell for him? She laughed bitterly. He'll think I'm just after more money. Or he'll think you're human. But Nora couldn't risk it. She had spent years building walls around her heart, protecting herself from more loss. Letting Vincent in had been a mistake. Loving him would be catastrophic. The grand gesture. The gallery opening happened on a Friday evening. Nora only knew about it because Jackie physically dragged her there, claiming they needed to support local artists. She didn't realize until they walked through the doors that every piece of art on display was hers, her sketches, her paintings, everything she had ever created and stored away like secrets. They covered the walls in careful arrangements, each one labeled with her name and a story Vincent had written about what he imagined when he looked at them. He bought your work from your professors, your roommates. Anyone who had pieces, Jackie explained. He's been planning this for weeks. Vincent appeared then, moving through the crowd like he was searching for something. When he found her, he stopped. You came? You stole my art. I showcased your talent. There's a difference. He moved closer. I need to tell you something, and I need to say it in front of everyone so you know it's real. The crowd went quiet, phones already recording. Nora wanted to run, but her feet wouldn't move. The truth without conditions. I hired Nora Bennett to pretend to be my girlfriend, Vincent said clearly. I paid her money to attend events and smile for cameras, but somewhere between the contract and the headlines, something changed. She wasn't pretending anymore. And neither was I. He turned to face her fully. I fell in love with the way you read to children in hospitals. The way you see beauty in small things. The way you challenge me to be better instead of just more. Successful. You reminded me that living means more than surviving. Nora's eyes burned with tears. Vincent, the contract is over. The money is yours regardless. But I'm standing here in front of all these people and cameras asking if you'll give me a chance to earn what I tried to buy. A real chance. No rules, no pretending. Just us. The gallery waited, breath held. Nora looked at this man who had started as a stranger in the dark, became a business arrangement, then somehow became the person who understood her broken pieces, because his matched. You're an idiot, she said, but she was smiling through tears. You could have just called. Would you have answered? Probably not. Then I did it right. He reached for her hand. So what do you say? Can we start over? For real this time? Nora looked at their joined hands, at the gallery walls covered with pieces of her soul he had collected like treasures. No more contracts? Just two people who found each other in the dark and are brave enough to try in the light. She kissed him then, in front of cameras and strangers, and a city that had judged them both. It wasn't perfect or practiced. It was real, messy, and absolutely right. Later, when the crowd had dispersed and they stood alone surrounded by her art, Vincent pulled her close. "I meant what I said, all of it." "I know," Nora whispered. "That's the scary part. We'll figure it out together." And for the first time in years, Nora believed that maybe, just maybe, she deserved this kind of happiness. Not because she had earned it or paid for it, but simply because love, when it's real, doesn't require justification. It just requires two people brave enough to try. The end.